Namaskar and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology Debunking Mythology. Today we have Sat means truth, Logos means a study or science, Sattology means a science of truth, a study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which is study of myth, fake, lie, or an imagination. Who would like to study that? That's exactly what mythology is all about. The mythology was purposely branded to the native cultures, of India, especially, and then other countries of the world also. The word myth comes from a Sanskrit word. So you can say it was primarily coined for Vedic literatures. But we have found out that most of the things written by our Vedic rishis, munis, have been scientifically established even today. I'm not a very good student of astronomy, but even I can see multiple presentations and say there are a lot of truth there, a lot of science over there. And and we are gradually discovering in archaeology also, and also the trends, logic, and reasoning, everything points to the same direction, that most of the things written by rishis and munis were a scientific fact. I have a very, very special guest, a great friend, and a very good researcher on these topics. Let us welcome Shri Vedveer Arya.
Namaste, Aditya ji.
Vedveer ji, there is a the Western propaganda doesn't stop. It just keeps going on and on. It's in their textbooks, and when we say that the misinformation campaign, the propaganda is so strong
Yes.
that it is difficult for Western a common person in Western world to really understand the antiquity of Vedic literatures. So
Yes.
I think through these small presentations that we are talking about, like from the perspective of calendars and history, we are actually bringing some point. What is the significance of this, according to you, that how we can influence them to understand that there is another side to the story also, not just one side?
No, the propaganda is actually because since colonial era or the Western, the academia, they were doing a research in a particular direction. Now it became more political than the academic. They want to control the entire narrative with reference to history or linguistics or many things. This is the reason why the propaganda, they selectively do some research in a particular direction, and then they start propagating that the antiquity of any civilization. Especially the Harvard's genetic research, if we refer to the findings presented by the David Reich and others, what they do, they study the genetics only after 2000 BC. They don't take any data prior to 2000 BC. Why? Because they think that Indian civilization does not exist before 2000 BC. Only the some Indus Valley, so-called Indus civilization, that ended, and finally the some Central Asians migrated to India, and they actually, that is the beginning of the Indian civilization. This is the false narrative, and it has no evidence at all till date. So the literary and the various other evidences clearly suggest that Indian civilization has a continuous history, at least beginnings of the Holocene, starting from the beginnings of Holocene, or we can say from at the end of the Ice Age onwards. That's why in a way, Indian civilization was actually a cradle of East-West civilizations also. So that we can easily establish based on the various astronomical references, because it's extremely difficult to establish the archaeological evidence at this stage, because there are very little archaeology has any evidence today. Yes, a city was discovered in the seabed of Gulf of Cambay, that can be dated up to the 11,000 BC, and Bhirrana in Indus, near in Haryana, very close to Delhi. The archaeological findings have been dated around 7,500 BC. So Indian history is continuous since 11,000 BC onwards, as per the whatever the little archaeological evidence exists. But literary evidence has enormous, means the entire Sanskrit literature and Vedic, post-Vedic, and the later Lokic Sanskrit literature that gives a very robust evidence to establish our chronology. Today what I'm going to present related to the how our the calendrical astronomy was evolved, because that's a greater evidence, and it gives so many details. So those are actually datable. Ji, Aditya.
No, you said very right points because the faulty assumption, and they negate themselves all the time. They contradict themselves all the time. Like
Yes,
the Greek buildings, they can never answer that. How did Greeks build great buildings? They can
yes,
never
yes,
answer the temples of India. They can never answer. Most
yes,
of the temples have been carbon dated to be at least 12,000 years. Many of them.
yes, yes,
And inscriptions they cannot negate. There are
yes,
inscriptions written in Thailand, in Devanagari, in India, many places in India. Ihole is, everyone quotes Ihole.
yes,
And so they can negate even the Indraprasth has an inscription in Brahmi script,
yes,
which was found in a part of India, South Delhi.
yes, yes.
And so they cannot negate all those things, so they just rubbish, they just put it aside. Like
See,
yesterday was some professor was telling me, and this renowned professor from Harvard telling me that Mahabharat is just a poem. That's what he was saying.
yeah, they can't, because if you, I think I have quoted the Newton. Newton wrote a book, The Chronology of Ancient Nations. Actually, this book was published 1 year later after his death. He died around 1728, and his book was published in 1729. In that book, he says that Greeks wrote never in prose. Okay, so they wrote always in poetry, like Iliad and Odyssey, the Homer's poetry. So that's why that is not reliable. Only the texts written in prose are reliable. A
Okay.
scientist is talking about this way. Writing poetry, it's only a way of writing, because olden days the writing, it was a tradition to write in poetry so that we can memorize. At that time, today you have so many things, Google and everything, you can search anytime what is it. During that time, everything has to be in your mind, so you have to memorize. Your knowledge has to be present in your mind, it is not in your books. This was the reason why they came with the style of sutras, means having very short notes, need not to be write in a long paragraphs, or just writing in a verse so that you can memorize, and then the that related interpretations you will do with your own mind. So this was the reason that was written, but you're simply rejecting the authenticity of the poet, the facts written in poetry. It is totally unscientific approach. It means, I don't know, sometimes I doubt the so-called intellectual honesty
No,
of the so-called great scientists of
no,
West.
I think the entire PhD program in America, especially on the Hindu studies, it's a total fake propaganda, according to me. And just getting somebody PhD on Hindu studies from Harvard University or Berkeley, it is a fake propaganda, total fake. Like he was telling me yesterday that Bhagavad Gita was written in 400 Common Era. Can you imagine? Like just because they wrote Bible in 525, it
Yes.
doesn't mean the Bhagavad Gita was just 100 years before. And they said the later Brahmanas modified Krishna, and they are saying Krishna was very casteist. That's what they're saying.
Okay.
And they're teaching this to American kids.
Huh, yes.
Anyway,
No,
let's
this is
continue.
very unfortunate the way but the finally the chronology. This is the what we need to correct it. Actually, I thought presenting, because last time I think last episode with you we did on the linguistics,
That's right.
how the historical linguistics have been evolved, the dating, how the chronology affects this. I thought I will present on out of India migrations. Till
That's
now
right.
we thought that Aryans migrated to India, but
Yes.
I wanted to show the evidence is in the Western sources only. I am not going to present from Indian sources. That
Yes.
I will corroborate. But there are enormous evidence in the Western resources, means the literature and others, that proves that there were numerous out of India migration. So next time I'll present it, because I wanted to first establish the timelines perfectly. So I'm going to present today the how the Indian calendrical astronomy has been evolved starting from Vedic era to till date. How we were using continuously these well-developed lunisolar calendars. In that one, this precession concept also, whether it was a precession and trepidation, how that became trepidation. Later, again, we switched over to 360 precession. I'll just present that one. So, I'll just show you what actually the Western historians taught us about the astronomy. I hope you can see it.
Yes. Yes, please.
Yes. Yes. So, it is regarding precession of equinoxes. The Western historians or those work on history of astronomy, they say that it was the Hipparchus. He was the first person who discovered the rate of precession, and he gave the value that first degree in 100 years. Then we find some trepidation related, some reference in the works of Theon of Alexandria. What he says that ancient astrologers believed that the precession of the equinoxes, rather than being a steady, unending motion, instead reverses the direction every 640 years. And so he is actually referring to trepidational movement of precession. And then he says the last, the precession means the reversal happened somewhere in 158 BC. This is the statement actually is available in the works of Theon of Alexandria. Based on this, David Pingree, what he says, it is not unreasonable to suppose that the idea of trepidation or precession was introduced into India by the Greeks, though the parameters chosen by the Indians are their own. This is the totally a propaganda by David Pingree. If somebody says that Greeks introduced the how moon looks like to the Indians, it is so foolish. The trepidation precession, if can be viewed by the Greeks, Indians also can view it, because Indians always followed the nakshatra related astronomy, where the West had no idea of this Greek, the nakshatra related. They followed the 29, the lunar cycle, but nakshatra based the tithi, it means every day the moon's position in a particular lunar mansion that was named after a nakshatra. So there are numerous references in Indian text that indicates that Indians actually invented or discovered the idea of trepidation or precession much earlier than any civilization on this earth. Not generally, the university textbooks on the history of astronomy, they think that Babylonian astronomy and Greek astronomy is much older than Indian astronomy. But that is not true. How that? Let us explore it. So, in last many my talks on Sattology, I have established the timelines, like Vedic period starts somewhere early Vedic period, 14,500 BC. Then Vedic period, we can say the mid Vedic period, that starts somewhere 13,500 BC to 10,500 BC. So the all Vedas were compiled somewhere in the last millennium of the Vedic period, that is 11,500 to 10,500 BC. Thereafter, the post-Vedic period, all Brahmana texts, Aranyakas, and various post-Vedic texts were written during that period. Thereafter, the Surya Siddhanta, and it starts. So, what we can actually bifurcate the history of the Indian astronomy, the pre-Siddhantic periods was actually up to 677 BC. Why? Because Surya Siddhanta was written in 6778 BC. I have established this test based on the software simulations, because the Mayasura refers to a perfect conjunction in Aries. on Chaitra Shukla Pratipada. So that date we can absolute, actually the conjunction can be is absolutely datable, and the date is 22nd February 6778 BC, almost 8,800 years before. Mayasura personally observed this conjunction, and he took this conjunction as an epoch, and he wrote Surya Siddhanta that changed the entire Indian astronomy. That's why that was the beginning of Siddhanta astronomy. Generally, that is called Siddhanta Jyotisha. Prior to that, Vedanga Jyotisha. So this is the cutoff timeline. 6777 BC is the beginning of the Siddhantic astronomy. Prior to that, it was the Vedanga Jyotisha. Generally, they followed 5-year Yuga cycles and 2 lunar month intercalation in every two after completion of 2.5 years. This was the Indian astronomy. Now, what is the reference of the earliest observation of precession in India? So it's I can in Gopatha Brahmana, or actually in Mahabharata, it is stated that Vishwamitra, he observed the precession of summer solstice that took place from Dhanishta to Shravana nakshatra, and he revised the list of nakshatras. So Pratishravana Purvani Nakshatrani Sasarjaya. This is the statement in Mahabharata. The Vishwamitra, the first Vishwamitra, because during the Vedic times, the descendants of the Vishwamitra were also called Vishwamitra because during those days no surnames existed. So the famous rishi, a progenitor of the particular gotra or lineage, every descendant had the name like a Vishwamitra only, though they had their own personal names, but still they were called as the Vishwamitra. He was the first Vishwamitra. The Menaka and Vishwamitra's daughter Shakuntala, she married Dushyanta, and they had a son Bharata. And he was the founder of the Bharata dynasty in India. And this is the reason why our nation is called Bharata, which is named after the Bharata, the great Bharata. He flourished around 13,500 BC. So our Bharat has the antiquity of Bharata is almost 15,500 years minimum. Now, this is the first observation what has been mentioned in Mahabharata, that Vishwamitra observed the precession from Dhanishta to Shravana. Why? Because during the time of Brahma, summer solstice used to occur in Dhanishta nakshatra. Now that has been shifted to Shravana nakshatra. So this shifting was named as a Sampata. So, and in Ramayana, it is clearly written that Purne Varsha Sahasretu Brahma Loka Pitamaha Abravid Madhuram Vakyam Vishwamitram Tapodhanam. So, it roughly indicates Ramayana that there was a time gap between Brahma and Vishwamitra around 1,000 years. So, in 1,000 years, a precession is around 13.5 degrees or 1 nakshatra. This is the same thing what has been referred to in Mahabharata. So we can say Vishwamitra was the earliest person who actually indicates that there had been a precession of 1 nakshatra with reference to winter solstice. Now, the Vasishtha, because Vasishtha and Vishwamitra both were actually during the time of the Trishanku. So we have to date Trishanku, the great kings of Ayodhya. So the Trishanku's time has to be around 13,500 BC. And at the stage, Vasishtha and Vishwamitra both were actually intellectually, they differed from each other. Vasishtha was following the traditional calendar. He says, no, Dhanishta, we have to follow the calendar from Dhanishta Nakshatra only. But when Vishwamitra proved conclusively that at present the summer solstice is happening at Shravana, so Vasishtha he lost the argument with him. Then finally, Vasishtha did more research, which generally called that he went to the woods and he did some penance or some tapasya, and then he came back with an idea that no, we have to start any calendar, means a calendar, a lunisolar calendar must begin from an equinox, not from a any solstice. So he established that a calendar starting from Ashwini Nakshatra from Mesha Rashi. So why Mesha Rashi is so sacred for Indians from Vedic era onwards? Why? Because the Vasishta or Vedic rishis introduced a calendar beginning from autumnal equinox. This is the reason in Rig Veda numerous references like Jivema Sharada Shatam means Sharad means autumn. Autumn became actually a reference to the year or new year. So there are hundreds of references in Vedic and post-Vedic literature that indicates that during Vedic and post-Vedic literature, the Vedic Indians followed a lunisolar calendar that commenced from the autumnal equinox. So this was the new change in entire calendrical astronomy. So this is how we can fix the epoch of the autumnal equinox, or like Ashwini Nakshatra means the beginning of the 0 degree in Mesha Rashi. So very basic elementary trigonometry, or we can say that was evolved during the time of Rigvedic era, and the Ashwini Nakshatra became a 0 degree in the zodiac of Vedic calendar. So this is how the Ashwini is the most important devata in Rigvedic hymns, and almost 50 suktas of Rigveda. The Ashwini is the devata of 50 suktas of Rigveda. And Ashwini Kumara, certainly they lived before Vishwamitra and Vasishtha, means they have to be dated before 13,500 BC. They were very famous as a who invented medicine during their time. So that's why those, because the two stars, it appears that Vasishtha named those two stars in Mesha Rashi in Aries as after Ashwini Kumaras. That's why we know Ashwini Nakshatra is the first nakshatra presently. This is how in Vedic corpus Sharad Ritu as the beginning of New Year, and there are almost 33 references of Sharad as a year in Rigveda, and 18 references in Taittiriya Samhita as an year, starting from Sharad Ritu. Even the beginning of the Sukta, Taittiriya Samhita means Yajurveda. Yajurveda first mantra itself begins from the Ishe Tvorje. Isha is the name of a month. A month is actually the first month of autumn season during the Vedic times. And this is the reason why Latadeva's Surya Siddhanta, the Surya Siddhanta, what is available today, it was actually compiled by Latadeva around 3101 BC. And because that refers to a conjunction in pieces, means in Meena Rashi. What he says, the 6 Rashis means 6 signs of the zodiac, means the 180 degree zodiac starting from Mesha Aries to Virgo, that is the 180 degree. It is actually a part of Devas, and starting from the Tula Rashi to and the Meena Rashi. So that 180 degree is belong to Asura. This is the statement. Meshadau Deva Bhagaste Devanam Yati Darshanam Asuranam Tuladau tu Suryastad Bhaga Sanchara. Actually, during that time, 13,000 BC around, there was a struggle between Devas and Asuras. So, since Devas, the Vasishta and Saptarshi, the followers of the Saptarshis, they started calendar from the beginning of Mesha Rashi. So Asuras wanted totally opposite, so they selected the Vasanta Ritu or a spring season as the beginning of their calendar. This is how the two different calendars existed during the time. Asuras followed a tradition of a spring calendar, where the Devas followed the autumnal calendar. First, before studying the various statements in our Vedic and post-Vedic corpus, we have to understand the meanings of real words like Ayana. This word has been mentioned. Generally, we called it Uttarayana and Dakshinayana. Ayana means solstice, but in Vedic corpus and post-Vedic corpus, they generally used for the both, either solstice and equinox also. But they used one specific word for equinox, Vishuva or Vishuvat. wherever the Vishuva and Vishuvat word has been used, that is only referring to equinox, not solstice. And Agrayana and Agrayana, these two words are have been used in Vedic text. So it means the beginning of new year. And Sampata, a word has been used, Sampata, for the precession or shifting of equinox or solstice has been mentioned as a Sampata. Because that time it is, I don't know whether 360-degree precession idea existed, but they called it as a Sampata because they observed the shifting of equinoxes in a 1,000 years. They generally observed one nakshatra precession. So it is the Gopatha Brahmana. This is also a post-Vedic text. It mentions Tanva etan sampatan Vishwamitraha prathamam apashya. It means these the observation of sampadas, the observation of shifting of equinoxes or solstices, this precession has had been observed by the Vishwamitra for the first time. So during the Rigvedic era, it was Vishwamitra who observed, means that is the beginning of the observational history of precession in India. So it is, I don't know why modern history of astronomy is propagating that only Hipparchus is the first person who observed the precession, but it existed many thousands of years of much before the Hipparchus. Indians observed the precession. And then the same Gopatha Brahmana, it mentioned that Vamadeva also, who observed again, Tan Vishwamitrena Drishtan Vamadevo Asrijata. So now Vamadeva, he lived around 11,150 BC around. And there was the Rishi Bharadwaja. He also observed the Sampatas. These references are there. Then it comes Vasishtha Maitra Varuna. And he refers to three Sampatas. It means he is actually referring to the shifting of equinox by three nakshatras. That's why it is called three sampatas. So three sampata means almost 3,000 years have been elapsed. So what, and this gives a very good chronological information also. When Vasishtha Maitra Varuna, who was writing the Vedic Suktas, he had a history of, means Indian calendrical history of at least 3,000 years. So I have established the date of Brahma, father of Swayambhuva Manu, around 14,500 BCE. And during the time of 14,500 BCE, the the summer solstice used to occur in Dhanishta Nakshatra. So the Vasishtha Maitra Varuna actually referring to three. 14,000 to 13,000 BC, one Sampata, means one nakshatra, the shifting of one nakshatra. Then 13,500 to 12,500 is second Sampata, and 12,500 to 11,500 is third Sampata. So this is actually observed during the Vedic times itself. They had a kind of a knowledge that the precession or the point of summer solstice point or the equinox, autumnal equinox point is shifting one nakshatra in every 1,000 years. So this gives an indirect information about the chronology also, how to date the various rishis and others based on this astronomical inputs. And it is well known story in Vedic text that Daksha Prajapati had 27 daughters, and all 27 he married off 27 daughters to a moon. Actually, this is a reference to a list of 28 nakshatras. In Rigvedic time, for the first time, a list of 28 nakshatras have been finalized. It means a 360-degree zodiac has been divided into 28 parts. So a beginning of basic trigonometry in Vedic times actually began around 11,200 BCE. This is the reason why Rigveda has not all 28 reference of not all 28 nakshatras. May 5 or 6 or 7 nakshatras have been mentioned in Rigveda, but we have a entire list of 28 nakshatras in Atharva Veda. So This gives a complete nakshatra based astronomic calendrical astronomy and began around 11,200 BC. Why? Because at that time they observed winter solstice at Mrigashira Nakshatra. And this Mrigashira reference, why they called it Agrayana at the beginning of New Year, or various other issues. So this is the reason why Balagangadhar Tilak wrote a book on Orion, and but he mistakenly taken as a spring equinox at Mrigashira. That way he dates Rigveda around 4000 BC, but actually we have to take Orion at winter solstice. So that's why the Vedas have to be dated around 11,200 BC, not 4000 BC. This is only considering the what was which equinox or solstice has to be established at Mrigashira Nakshatra. Then there is a reference of 1,000 years Satra Yajna in Naimisharanya in Vedic and post-Vedic text. So this actually after the when Rigvedic rishis fixed the zodiac of 28 nakshatras during the Rigvedic times, they started continuously observing the multi-generational observation of astronomy began at Naimisharanya, 11,200 to 10,200 BC. Then they have observed that the winter solstice has now shifted to Rohini. That's why what they did, they again revised the list of nakshatras starting from Rohini. And this revision of nakshatra list took place around 10,200 BC. Thereafter, after 1,000 years, they have observed now winter solstice shifted to at Kritika. This is the reason the Atharva Vedas Nakshatra Sukta give the list of 28 nakshatras starting from Kritika. It means the Nakshatra Sukta of Atharva Veda was finally compiled at the around 9,200 BC, because this was the time when the winter solstice shifted to Kritika Nakshatra. Now, another interesting thing happened after 9,000 BCE. Since the we were following a zodiac of 28 nakshatras starting from 11,200 BCE to 9,200 BCE. At that time, the trigonometry was very elementary. So 360 degree, if you divide by 28, you will get some fractional value, 12 point something. So they wanted a better value for a one nakshatra, and they realized that it is not exactly 28 days, the moon's 360 degree movement. It is actually 27.36 or some value. It is even less than the 27.5. So that's why they wanted only 27 nakshatras. And at the time, Abhijit actually was little away from the zodiac, so they wanted to exclude it. This is how they excluded the Abhijit and come out of a list of 27 nakshatras. And finally, the list what we are following today, the list of 27 nakshatras starting from Ashwini, this list was finalized around 7,322 BCE. During that time, winter solstice had shifted to winter solstice. So this was the reason why Indian astronomy, because after this 7,300 BC, when we finalized the Vedic Indians finalized the list of Ashwini, the list of nakshatras starting from Ashwini nakshatra. Thereafter, immediately means another 400, 500 years later, Mayasura wrote a Suri Siddhanta, and Siddhanta astronomy came into existence. Thereafter, we never revised the list of nakshatras. We followed the same nakshatra list even till today. Now, in Gopatha Brahmana, there is a very interesting dialogue. Means the question answer. He wrote one chapter in he's asking a questions and then answering. Then he says, why the Katham Esham Agrayanam Anantaritam Bhavati. It means why the beginning of New Year shifts. Katham Chaturmasyani Antaritani Bhavanti. Why Chaturmasya? Means actually this was a sacred 4 months, means the Varsha and Sharad Ritu reason. Why this also shifts? This is the question. Then Gopatha Brahmana answers in the next paragraph, Devaha vai sahasra samvatsaraya didikshare. Devas, the great, are very famous people of Vedic era, or they were called as Devas, and they performed yajna for 1,000 years. So then the importance of 1,000 years have been given. It is actually an observation of a precession of one nakshatra in 1,000 years has been replied to the question why it is shifting. So he is giving an answer that it's a one nakshatra precession in every 1,000 years. So Indians had a knowledge of a precession of 13.2 degrees in every 1,000 years, starting from the post-Vedic era. Now, there are other precessional observations have been mentioned in, like Lagadha's Vedanga Jyotisha. It refers to an equinox at at the beginning of Shravishta nakshatra. It's Dhanishta, and the vernal equinox was at the middle of Ashlesha. This is the reference in the Lagadha. And Maitrayani Upanishad also refers to an autumnal equinox in the second half of Shravishta nakshatra. And even in Maitrayani Upanishad clearly mentioned Katham Dhruvasya Prachalanam. It means the Maitrayani Upanishad actually asking the Rishi that why a pole star, the celestial North Pole star also deviates from the celestial North Pole, because due to precession only. So it means the Vedic Indians very meticulously observing the various astronomical positions of various stars. This is the reason they could observe a pole star, why a pole star is shifting. It's not so easy. It needs a meticulous multi-generational observation to even have that question why pole star deviates from the north celestial pole. So I don't think in any literature of the world other civilization had such in-depth knowledge of astronomy. And Vedanga Jyotisha was actually the available Vedanga Jyotisha was not originally written by Lagadha. Why? Because in the first shloka it says, it mentions that Kalajnanam Pravakshyami Lagadhasya Mahatmana. I'm going to tell the astronomy told by Mahatma Lagadha. So a person who is writing, he will not call himself as a Mahatma. And Pranamya Shirasa Shuchi, this word is there. It means that a person called Shuchi, he recompiled Vedanga Jyotisha of post-Vedic period during the just a few hundred years before Mahabharata era. And at that time, winter solstice shifted to Shravishta Nakshatra. That's why he says that probably the Adi Yuga, because generally the lunisolar calendar perfectly reconciles the days, but the precession creates an illusion stating that the winter solstice also, because during the time of Mahabharata era, the Vedanga Jyotisha calendar used to commence from winter solstice. But the same calendar during the Rigvedic era used to begin at autumnal equinox. But the astronomers of pre-Mahabharata or the Mahabharata era, they just assumed that probably the same winter solstice used to occur at Shravishta Nakshatra during the post-Vedic period. This was an illusion. How that illusion, I will explain it. Now, I have told you the Mayasura Surya Siddhanta. It was written around 22nd February 6. This is the only one astronomical reference which we can date perfectly and absolutely, and there is no room for any different interpretation. There's only one. The way it is written, very clearly written in Sanskrit, that all planets were in conjunction, a perfect conjunction within 30 degrees of Aries in the beginning of the first lunar day, that was the Chaitra Shukla Pratipada of that calendar. So that's why this becomes a very perfect epoch to start a calendrical astronomy. So this is the reason Mayasura wrote Surya Siddhanta considering the 22nd February 6778 BCE as an epoch. So this is the beginning of our Siddhanta Jyotishi. That's why I call it, it is the sheet anchor date for our chronology, especially the Yuga chronology. Why? Because if we are going to establish the chronology beyond Mahabharata, we have no other option to establish the Yuga chronology, because numerous literary references refer to some yugas, like Surya Siddhanta was written at the end of 28th Krita Yuga. Ramayana took place in the last century of 28th Treta Yuga, and Bharata says that he is writing Natya Shastra in Treta Yuga. So we can establish the dates of these texts if we establish the Yuga chronology. So this is the reason why I call 22nd February 6778 BC as the sheet anchor of the Yuga chronology. And Anil Narayanan text, I think this I have referred to earlier also, and he actually did some other studies, and he established that the data used by the Mayasura Surya Siddhanta actually leads to around 7300 BC. I just told you the finalization of Ashwinyadi list of nakshatras starting from Ashwini was finalized around 7322 BCE. This is the same data has been used by Mayasura. So the what Anil Narayanan established is absolutely matches with the chronology what I have established. And we need to understand there were two different versions of Surya Siddhanta. One is the Asura tradition, because Mayasura belonged to the Asura tradition of astronomy. So he follows also a yuga of 3000 years and 12,000 years, because Asuras followed equal length of yugas. That's why they generally follow this 3000 year yuga. And same is in the Persian tradition also. They follow uh, sub-cycle of Yuga as 3000 years, and finally they follow the 12,000 years Yuga, Mahayuga. But what happened in a later times, same 3000 has been multiplied by 60 and it became 1,80,000 years, and a Chaturyuga had 7,20,000 years. And the Pancha Siddhantika written by Varahamihira, he clearly mentioned that Mayasura Surya Siddhanta refers to a yuga of 1,80,000 years, means 180,000 years. A yuga had a length of 180,000 years. Now, the Daiva tradition of astronomy, actually, the Lata Deva was a student of Aryabhata, and he lived during the time of Mahabharata era. And what he was actually influenced by Mayasura Surya Siddhanta. So what he did, he just transformed the Asura tradition of Surya Siddhanta into Daiva tradition. He took all the details related to the Mayasura Surya Siddhanta, but he followed Yuga cycles related to Daiva tradition. So that's why he followed a Yuga of 1200 years, a Chatur Yuga of 12,000 years with the differential ratio of 4:3, 3:2, and 2:1 for the Krita, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali Yuga. And then he multiplied the 12,000 by 1200 by 360, and he followed 432,000 years for a yuga, and 4,320 years, means 4.32 million years. This is actually the Chatur Yuga, and a kalpa had 432 crores years in Indian terms. So this is the difference between Asura astronomy and Daiva astronomy. The Daiva astronomy followed a Chatur Yuga of 43,20,000 years, whereas Asura tradition followed only 7,20,000 years. This is the difference. And since Latadeva was influenced by Mayasura Surya Siddhanta, so he wanted an epoch for beginning of Kali Yuga, some conjunction. So he observed a conjunction. So it was not a perfect conjunction, but he observed a conjunction in pieces, means in Meena Rashi, around 18 February 3101 BC. So he established the epoch of his Surya Siddhanta as this conjunction. The conjunction took place in the 3101 BC. He used that an epoch for presenting the his version of Surya Siddhanta. So this is the difference between the both. Why early the Mayasura Surya Siddhanta refers to a conjunction in Aries, where the Latadeva Surya Siddhanta is referring to the conjunction in Meena Rashi, not in Mesha Rashi. Now, the cycle of axial precession in early Siddhantic astronomy, the Mayasura Surya Siddhanta is actually says it is clearly mentioned that 30,000 cycles in a kalpa. So that's why this they followed a cycle of 24,000 years and 1 degree precession in 66.66 years. And this is a very, very accurate. Presently, modern science follows around 72-degree precession for 1 degree. So but what Hipparchus gave is only 1 degree in 100 years. That is a very wild estimation. Where Mayasura or Surya Siddhanta was very close to the modern value. So, and he discovered this rate of precession almost 8,800 years before. It means at least 8,500 years before the Hipparchus lifetime. So, Indians established the actually the precession of equinoxes. This was the Mayasura who established the 360-degree precession. And so he says that in a kalpa, 30,000 cycles. So 30,000 cycles, you should not calculate in 432 crores years. So what you have to do, you have to take that 72 crores years, because the Mayasura Surya Siddhanta followed a Asura tradition of Yuga and Chaturyuga. So that's why the 1 degree precession was around 66.66 years. This was estimated by Mayasura. But in Romaka Siddhanta, they also followed same. Because Bhaskaracharya refers that there were almost so many cycles, 18 million or somewhere 1,894,110 cycles in a kalpa of Romaka Siddhanta. Romaka Siddhanta had a different calculation of a kalpa, means starting from creation to till date, or in a in a lifetime of a universe, how many cycles of this precession. So this is how the Romaka Siddhanta says. But Romaka Siddhanta followed the same Mayasura Surya Siddhanta cycle. So the Romaka Siddhanta also says that a precession, the rate of precession is 1 degree in 66.66 years. Now, Vriddha Vasishta Siddhanta and Shalakya Samhita Brahma Siddhanta, they follow a trepidational cycle. Actually, these Siddhantas came into existence during the time of Mahabharata era. And Parashara Siddhanta also follows some 7,400 years cycle. This trepidational concept evolved only during the time of Mahabharata era, because they have seen, because they knew that the winter solstice used to occur in Aries near to around 6,778 BC. Around 3,600 years have been elapsed. Now what happened? The Ashwini Nakshatra, the whatever the beginning of the calendar, now they observed that near Rohini at the time of Mahabharata era. Same. So that's why what they did, they trepidational 3,600 plus 2, around 7,200 years. So this is the first concept of trepidation. Actually, it's an illusion in a lunisolar calendar. And same as even Latadeva's Surya Siddhanta refers to 7,200 years of trepidation. So this is how the cycle of trepidation has been established based on the observation. What they found it during the Mahabharata era, they have seen the vernal equinox used to occur around Rohini. So they thought that the same the vernal equinox used to occur at the stage of Ashwini. So this is how they came out of the 3,600 years. It goes to around 60 degrees, and again it comes back to the Ashwini. So that's why this is 60, 61, 120 degree precession. And then they established this the Latadeva. Actually, he reduced from 66 to 60 years. Why? Because we started following the 60-year cycle, that Prabhavadi cycle. We actually, the 60-year cycle, we followed starting from the Surya Siddhanta's time. And at the time of Mahabharata era, around 60 cycles have been completed. 3,600 years have been completed. So that's why they thought that there is a trepidational movement of 3,600 years. And again, it will, the reversal will happen for 3,600 years. So this concept was established at the time of Mahabharata. Now what happened? The concept of trepidation has changed when the vernal equinox shifted to Ashwini. If you see how this trepidational illusion occurs in Indian lunisolar calendar. So I have just explained that the beginning of the autumnal equinox was the beginning of calendar during the Rigvedic era, and autumnal equinox used to occur at the around 0 degree in Aries, that is Ashwini Nakshatra. So this was around 13,500 years. But what happened again? The same point has been shifted to Ashwini around 7,200 BCE, but a person who is following the lunisolar calendar, he thinks that the same winter solstice must be at the time of Ashwini. So this is the illusion. Actually, due to precession, it appears that like one lunar month. Actually, it appears like that the lunisolar calendar accumulate one lunar month in every 2,000 years. Actually, it's an illusion. And same thing, if you see the same, the winter solstice used to occur at Ashwini Nakshatra around 7,200 BCE, around 100 BCE, the vernal equinox used to occur at Ashwini. But in a lunisolar calendar, it's extremely difficult to track or having this kind of the precession related knowledge. So what they thought, probably this Sampata precession is actually a trepidational movement. It goes from Ashwini to somewhere Rohini, and it comes back again Ashwini, then again it goes back to Rohini. This kind of a trepidational movement was actually an illusion in a lunisolar calendar. And now what happened at the stage of that 100 BCE? They wanted now the fix this vernal point there. This is called zero ayanamsha. So the beginning of 0 degree. So the Shakaira, I told you in my last talks that there were two different Shaka epochs. The ancient Shaka epoch started in 583 BC, and later Shaka, that is Shakanta, began in 78 AD. So what we have to do, when we are fixing the 0 degree, because Varahamihira refers to an epoch of Ayanamsha related to Romaka Paulisha Siddhantas in Shaka 427. So Varahamihira lived in 1st century BC during the time of Vikramaditya. So he is referring to epoch of 583 BC, and he says that is 21st March 157 BCE was the epoch of Romaka and Paulisha Siddhanta. Now Kalidasa's Jyotirvidabharanam, he says that the epoch of Surya Siddhanta has to begin around Shaka 445, that is 139 BCE. And Munjala, only they differ. It's not actually they're referring to the same epoch, 444. He took an elapsed year where the Kalidasa referred to current year. That's why finally both are referring to 139 BC. And Prithudaka Swami, he followed a different epoch. So he says around 173 BC, because he followed a 60-year cycle. So he wanted to begin the beginning of the Ayanamsha starting from the Prabhava year, not in somewhere in an astronomical a calculated 0 degree. He simply wanted to follow a Prabhava year should be the beginning for the zero Ayanamsha. So he selected 173 BCE, and he says in Shaka 800, means 217 AD, he says that the trepidation is around 6.3 degrees. And same Shatananda's Bhaswati, he takes actually the Shaka 450 as the zero Ayanamsha, that is 133 BC. So it is actually 173 to 133 BCE. Everybody wanted to fix the vernal point at a 0 degree of Aries. Why? Because they thought that the now trepidation should reverse. Means now it should not, from Aries means the Ashwini Nakshatra, now it moved to Bharani. This was the expectation by the Indian astronomers. Even Amaraja, he refers to the nil 0 degree trepidation in 1st century. So we can say starting from Mahabharata, to the astronomers of first century BC and first century AD, Indians followed the concept of trepidation, and they thought that it is actually when Varahamihira died in Shaka 509, it is around 74 BCE, the trepidation was zero. Nil means it's actually they're referring to zero ayanamsha, that the vernal point is at a 0 degree in Aries. Now what happened after first century, now they actually reduced the cycle of trepidation. Why? Because the Surya Siddhanta started 3101, the Latadeva Surya Siddhanta used the epoch of 3101. Then it's only 3000 years, it's not 3600 years what actually estimated during the time of Latadeva. So now they reduced the cycle. Now they say instead of 7200 years, the astronomers of first century CE, they said that now the trepidation period is only 5760 years, and they reduced the degrees also from 120 to 96 degrees. And Parameshwara simply he modified and he says 5800 years is the cycle of trepidation. But Amaraja was the only person who followed the ancient concept of trepidation. He says the trepidatial cycle must have 7,380 years. So he followed the 120-degree trepidation, where the other astronomers said no, it has to be only 96 degrees. So only 26-degree trepidation. How this concept has been, this is the way they followed. The Indian astronomers after first century BC, they said that this trepidation is actually, it goes from Ashwini to Bharani, some 24 degrees, and again it comes back, and from Ashwini to Revati. What happened after this zero ayanamsha? Indian astronomers expected that now the trepidatial movement from Ashwini, it should move toward Bharani, but it didn't happen. That went towards Revati. So now they said that no, it is actually it is a twice reversal. It happens. It goes 24-degree Bharani and it comes back, and again it goes to up to Uttara Bhadrapada, and then again it comes back to the 0-degree Ashwini. This is the second concept evolved during the first century, or first century BC or first century CE. Why? Because they observed now the vernal point has not shifted towards Bharani, but it was going towards Revati. But Manjula, he is the Laghumanasa, he is the only one astronomer, Indian astronomer. He rejected the concept of this trepidation. He said, no, it is actually Ayana Chalana. It is a 360-degree precession. This is the reason why vernal point has been shifted from 0-degree Aries towards Pisces, or towards the Revati Nakshatra. So that's why what he did, he said that total the cycles, this Ayana Chayana cycles are 1,99,699 cycles in a kalpa. So he estimated 1 degree in 60 years precession, and total the one cycle was around 21,632 years. And this is the reason why he says the Ayanamsha. He didn't refer to trepidation. He says the Ayana Chalana during his lifetime was around 6.50 degrees, 6.5 degrees. This is what the Munjala, he says, the 360-degree precision. Now, there is some follow the Munjala, but many people follow the Surya Siddhanta tradition. They say that no, it is only trepidation. So now the problem starts. The trepidation, if it is trepidation, then after Uttara Bhadrapada, it should again revert back towards Revati and Ashwini, but that didn't happen. But the problem is this Shaka Shakanta. Those who support the trepidatial theory, they reject my Shaka Shakanta what I established based on the historical and epigraphic studies. I have established that the ancient Shaka actually began in 583 BC. If you start from zero ayanamsha in first century or second century BC, 139 BC or 133 BC, then already 30-degree precession has happened, means 6 degrees more than 24. So the Drigganita clearly rejects the trepidationial theory. But what they say, no, it's not correct. We must start from the Shakanta only. But now, even we follow, because they follow the zero Ayanamsha in 499 AD, because they don't believe in the ancient Shaka epoch. They say only Shaka epoch began 78 CE. So the trepidation must begin only around the zero Ayanamsha year was only 499 AD or somewhere close to that. If so, then 60 years is the per degree, so 24 degree. Then 1939, at least 60, 70 years before, the trepidation should add a reverse motion, but that didn't happen. So what they do, they reject the 60 years per degree precession or trepidation. Now they say no, it is the 72 years. That's why you have to wait another 100 years or 200 years. It can only reverse around 2020, 2227th year, means around 200 years later. But actually, trepidation was just an illusion in a lunisolar calendar. The real fact, what modern physics and the modern all astronomers and even the all softwares design are actually, they follow the 360 degree. That is the only a fact. It is the truth. Trepidation was actually an illusion in a lunisolar calendar. But later, this concept was rejected by the Indian astronomers like Munjala. He says that it's only 360 degree precision. So, this is the history of Indian calendrical astronomy. It's so beautifully we can establish the timelines as well as how it was evolved starting from 13,000 or rather 14,500 BC to first century BC, almost 14,500 years. And now, the way Indian calendrical astronomy established following the Surya Siddhanta calendar last 2000 years. So, this calendrical history clearly proves that the Indian astronomy is much, much ancient than any astronomy of any world civilization, means the Greek or Babylonian or Egyptian civilization. So this is the reason why India was the cradle of all civilization. In a way, we can say that the knowledge of astronomy was actually transmitted from India to the Western civilization. That is the truth. Thank you, Aditya ji.
Thank you so much, Vedveer ji. You conclusively proved that the origin of Western astronomy is Indian astronomy.
Yes.
And this is a great learning for all of us also who are in this field and who want to build their faith on this area, especially. And it is like we all know that, but the thing is that we have to speak more. And I think through these platforms and many such platforms, we need to spread the knowledge where we need to make sure that everybody understands it. And also we need to get into the Western academics and preach about this also. We need to tell them.
The real problem is actually the chronology. So this is, you can't change the narrative just fighting with some narrative changes. It's actually timeline. It's a fact, and there is no room for any divergence of opinion because those are facts. There are only yes, no in a Boolean logic. You have to
See,
establish. That's all.
the the
If yes.
the Western
Huh,
governments agree with their scholars, whether right or wrong. The problem is the Indian government has also to start accepting their own researchers also, because
yes.
the problem is that the American government will say, okay, if this academic is saying and 20 of them are saying, they accept it because they are not
Yes.
experts on that.
Yes.
Same thing has to happen in India also. So then I
I
think
think
things will change, because then the Indian government should tell the others that this is our version of the history and let's have a debate. Because this is the kind of debates we need. Right now, we have debates
yes.
on all the wrong things.
Yes.
And this is the kind of debate we need, because the identity creates a good individual. Yeah, that's what I always said that.
And it is beautiful enough when you study the evolution of Indian calendar and it unfolds our chronology also.
That's right.
That's because it the entire knowledge can't be evolved in overnight. It
Right.
needs a multi-generational observation, and those references can be perfectly dated. So actually, this is the reason when you refer to that conjunction in Aries, it's we can get an absolute date in almost 8,000 years, 8,800 years before. That gives a very good sheet anchor for establishing the chronology beyond Mahabharata.
Right now, in Indian scholars, they just blindly accept what is written by the Western, and they start building. They try to fit in the Indian chronology into that, and that's where creates all the confusion. If they
They are
present,
just doubting Thomases in academia, Western, as far as Indian sources are concerned. So they created a doubt in our mind to doubt your own sources. So that's all. You have no evidence. You have simply doubt
and they won't accept it,
without any
even if you
evidence. You
accept,
have
even
any
if
substantial evidence to have a doubt? No.
and without evidence also, and also even if Indians try to explain, they won't accept, because then entire history of Western world goes away and everything goes away. So
Yes.
so literally they don't own anything, and they accuse the whole world of IPR, but their entire IPR is based on a faulty presumption.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the whole point. It's all economics in the end. Earth, like Bhagavad says very clearly, Artha Sanchayan. Our Surya Pravritti is all Artha Sanchayan, all about earning money and wealth. So thank you so much, Vedveer ji. What a wonderful presentation. And for viewers who are watching it, do let us know your feedback. Namaste.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste, Aditya.